last little bit about who he is, and then we're going to have Rob McCabe and Dean. So as I said, he had been pursuing Sarah Whitman and also pursuing Annie Richmond and a childhood sweetheart, Sarah Rossiter. All of these people were literary people. All of these people were poets in their own right, and followers of Margaret Fuller. And so, you know, the point about Edgar Allan Poe is he's not a person who came out of, dropped from the sky. He was a participant in he was not only a participant, a founder of a movement and a participant in the Transcendentalist movement, kind of on the outskirts of that movement. But spiritually, that's where he was. Now, of course, he was a fan of Laudlum. Yeah, he was a big fan. And I'm really glad that Peter brought up the issue of death, his death.
What was he a fan of? Could you repeat that?
Laudanum.
Laudanum.
No, what is that?
Opium and a mixture of opium and wine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, big fan. Well, I mean, it's a wonderful thing, I guess. So he tried to. That's all very close. I mean, he lived approximately 40 years. Right? And he tried to get a magazine together called the Broadway Journal, and that was a flop. It failed. And he moved. He was living in the Bronx at the time, in this little cottage, which is now part of Fordham University. So you can go and see it. But I wanted to bring up his family, and Rob had reminded me. Every single one of the members of his family either died of tuberculosis or the cholera epidemic that was going on at the time in Baltimore, or consumption. And there was 26 members of his family, and they all died before the age of 40. So it's just absolutely ridiculous. And that includes his cousin John Allen, and cousin John Allen's wife, so what John Allen had taken from Edgar Allan Poe, which was his inheritance, ended up going to the state of Virginia because there was no one to inherit. So that was another sad. So the poor man had to live in filth and squalor for the time being, just to be recognized in that way. So the last handful of his of items that he had written were published in the American Review and the Evening Mirror. Evening Mirror was a new at the time, I guess, high gloss magazine that specifically geared everything to this new genre of horror. And they didn't call it horror at the time; they called it grotesque. So I thought that was very interesting, and it was started by Sarah Rossiter's family. So Peter brought up the mystery of his death. Tremors, heart disease, epilepsy, syphilis, cholera, rabies. So we don't know. But Rufus Wilmot Griswold, a great Connecticut anthropologist, writer, professor, a Yale man, wrote, it's called Griswold's Memoir. And I'm going to just read a piece of it. And the funny thing is he didn't sign it Griswold. He signed it Ludwig, because he didn't want to, well, you'll hear it. Edgar Allan Poe is dead. He died in Baltimore the day before yesterday. This announcement will startle many, but few will be grieved by it. And then it goes on to say, Poe is a depraved, drunk, drug-addled madman with no clue of letters. Signed, Ludwig. So, and this was a man of letters. So I don't know what happened between them, if anything, but apparently he was not liked.
He wasn't a fan.
Wasn't a fan. So this grotesque, this gothic, romantic theme, all of his stories have some sort of base in physical truth. The Fall of the House of Usher is about the Usher House on Benefit Street in the city of Providence. There's an actual Usher House. And it's funny because the artist who drew that famous front cover of the hardback book, I don't know if we still have it, but the hardback book, it's almost the exact replica of that house. So there's little twinges of reality that exist in his, and I don't mean that just in the physical reality, but in the psychological reality that Peter brought up. So what is it that he left us with? He left us with a new form of writing, the horror genre. He left us with a new emotion, this romanticism. Like I said, literary styles and themes that hadn't been presented before, and inspired some of the greatest writers, Mary Shelley and H.P. Lovecraft, who we hosted last October. So, anyways, he left us with, let me get to how many. Let's see. He left us with 52 tales, 25 poems, 10 complete works, and these amazing essays that I talked about called The Lighthouse, talking about his time on the shore. And then, of course, a couple of essays on poetic principles and the philosophy of how to compose writings. We never think of him as a actual philosopher of writing or an individual critiques writer, but he did that as well. And those I'd suggest that you read if you want something dry and not so romantic. You might want to read on a Sunday with your significant other. That's the stuff to read. Forget about this. And he also had a political side to him. and what he essentially asked for is openness and the ability to have a conversation, open conversation in a political form. People don't think of him as political, but he had it in him. So I'm going to stop there. Rob McCabe is going to come up.